The Business Buzz is proudly brought to you by the Wits Business School, sculpting global leaders.
The Business Buzz with Modiwa Mob Justice Kavaza. Thursdays from 7 to 8 p.m. Join the conversation on Twitter. Tweet us at VOWFM, #Business Buzz.
It is VOW FM 88.1 and we are talking about online shopping versus in-store shopping on Black Friday, and we are joined by an e-commerce expert and we are going to be discussing the rise of online shopping and e-commerce shopping. Welcome to the Business Buzz, Josh Dillon.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Tando.
Josh, how has online shopping on Black Friday evolved over the years in South Africa? Because I mentioned, earlier on in the show that with Black Friday, we used to know Black Friday for waking up at the crack of dawn and long queues, and that has changed drastically. I mean, even with last year's Black Friday, it wasn't as full, the malls weren't as full. So how has that changed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. It all comes down to the digital economy. So just like in our lives, right, traditionally speaking, if you wanted to reach 100 people, you would have to go to a busy store center and stand on a chair and scream at the top of your lungs in order for those people to hear you. But if we look at social media and the social media world, you can easily reach thousands of people by creating a Facebook and Instagram account. And that's a perfect example of how we're moving from operating in the physical space and more operating in the digital space. And just like it happens in our social lives, and I think that's where most of us have experienced it first, it also occurs in the e-commerce and commercial space. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people's actions and the way that they function shift from a physical realm more into a digital space. So when we see things like Black Friday come up, it's a perfect example about how we are gradually progressing more and more into this digital world.
So there are people like myself who prefer to be in store, to feel, to touch the items, only for certain items. So, for example, if it is a cell phone, I don't mind buying that online. But for most of the products that I buy, even standard basic products like a fridge, for example, a TV, I prefer to be in store and to buy that. But obviously online shopping does provide a larger product selection. You can compare between different stores, and even if you are looking at one store, sometimes it's just not possible to go and see everything in that store. So what are the advantages of shopping online compared to in-store shopping?
Yeah, so you've hit the nail on the head. Basically what you're describing is convenience, right? So if you're going to go to a store and you're going to go to a mall, in order to get an idea for pricing, you're going to have to physically walk from store to store to store to store. And I know a lot of us, I think mostly the gents maybe listening, know how gruesome that can be. I don't know, personally as a guy, when I go to the mall, I know exactly what I'm getting, where I'm getting it from, and I go there, get it, and then go home. But I know for a lot of people, they want to compare prices, right? So that's another element of convenience, is you can easily go online and compare prices from multiple different places. You have different services that actually provide that service of finding the cheapest price, right? So, for example, Google has filled that gap. If you go and you Google products, you'll see a whole range of prices and you'll be able to very easily compare. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to convenience, right? So you mentioned some forms of convenience. Another one is comparing prices, but there's many other forms of convenience. I think it also comes down to accessibility, right? So I might have a really nice coffee that I drank when I was visiting Cape Town one day. And when I come to Joburg, they don't have a store in Joburg. But because of online shopping and e-commerce, I'd be able to go and buy that coffee, even though I'm based in Johannesburg. I don't need to go all the way there to go and buy it and then bring it back. I can purchase it online and get it delivered. So there's also that element of convenience and also accessibility, because it makes products that are developed in certain places more accessible to the broader array of people that are maybe based somewhere else.
Yeah, you find it gruesome, I find it enjoyable. And I totally understand. Are there any specific trends or patterns that you have noticed in online shopping behavior during Black Friday?
Yeah, so there is a huge increase in spending when it comes to Black Friday. So there has been some research that is done, and it's predicted that this Black Friday is going to bring 26 billion rands into our economy. So what that lands up doing is it boosts online spending, consumer spending. So we touched a little bit on that earlier, where, taxes does the opposite. If you are getting taxed more, you have less disposable income, therefore you can't buy as much. That obviously is going to hurt businesses. But with Black Friday and e-commerce, what we see is a boost in spending. So that helps businesses get more disposable income, which creates jobs. And if you look at that 26 billion rand, it's estimated that that's going to create about 100,000 jobs in South Africa. So that's a really great way to stimulate the economy. And I think there's a lot of talk about, in South Africa, how we're dealing with all these different challenges that are brought about. I really believe that by combining technology and creativity, we are able to create opportunities for ourselves to uplift ourselves economically. And Black Friday is a perfect example of that.
So how do online retailers then prepare for the increased demand and traffic on Black Friday?
Right. So from a technical standpoint, when you're developing a website, right, because that's mostly where these transactions are going to be occurring, is via a website, there's certain stress testing that needs to be done on that website, right? So, for example, there's been notoriously in the last few years, Takealot has had their Blue Dot sale, and there has been an influx of visitors that come through to that website at a very specific time, and the website crashes. So what customers and what businesses need to do is when I refer to customers, is because I actually own a digital marketing agency.
Okay.
So when I'm talking about this, I'm thinking about my customers. So that's
which would be the retailer.
Which would be the retailer, exactly. So when we're developing a website for them, for example, we want to make sure that there's enough bandwidth on that website to handle the traffic at that specific point in time. So the hosting is very important. Another element, coming back to the concept of accessibility, right? So a lot of South Africans, it is getting better. There is a positive outlook. Internet access is becoming more and more accessible. Data prices are dropping over time. People are getting more and more access to fiber. So that allows more internet access, which is great. But not everyone is there yet, right? So for example, a lot of people that might be participating in online shopping might be doing it from a device using data, right? So if I've developed a website and on my storefront, I have a whole ton of videos and pictures that are all going to chow someone's data, that's going to decrease the accessibility of them being able to purchase from me, right? Because they might only have 10 megs left to buy from me. If I put a video on there that loads automatically, that 10 megs is going to get eaten up very quickly by that video playing, right? So what clients of ours, what we advise our clients to do is to make sure that their web pages are accessible as possible. Make sure that when someone accesses it, there's not a large video on there that's going to eat someone's data up, that the pictures are minimal as possible, so that when people access it, there's a little bit more of an element of accessibility, and you're going to be able to make it possible for people to purchase from you. So those are kind of the things that we think about when we are developing these sites in order to make sure that Black Friday is a success for our clients.
So you own a digital marketing agency. I mean, are you able to tell us the growth that you've seen, for example, from 5 years ago to, let's say, 2022, in terms of the uptake and the number of people who are shopping online, for any of your clients, just, an example that you can give us? So
that's one way to measure the growth. It's easier for me to measure the growth from our business perspective, right? So the amount of clients that we're able to access and that come on board with us has increased as we see more and more of this adoption when it comes into the digital space, right? So a lot of people, when we talk about COVID, they talk about how it hit businesses, how it made things more difficult. In our case, it was actually the opposite. It actually made things better for our business because it forced businesses to go into the digital space, which means we get more clients, which helps our business grow. So from my perspective, it's when I started the business 4 years ago, it was very difficult for me to get clients because I had to sit there and spend a lot of time convincing them why they should go online. What landed up happening is COVID hit and businesses had no other choice because their brick and mortar store was not able to bring in customers. So the only other option for them was to go online. So it became a lot easier after COVID for me to get clients because people understood what value it provides and why it's necessary for them to go online. So that is a sign of the adoption, and that's how we've seen it in our business. And I think it's just also us as consumers, obviously as the years go on, we become used to
buying online. But 10 years ago, there were big concerns about security, uploading your bank details or your card details online. Have you seen a decline in that now?
Yes, so it has declined as more and more people use it. If you're having a conversation with your friend and they're telling you, don't go to that site because they scammed me and blah, 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 you're probably not going to have much trust in it, right? But a lot of people have seen success in the space, have been able to see how it adds to the convenience in their lives and how they've benefited from the various things that we discussed earlier. And that means that more and more people are adopting it. However, I do think it is important for me to talk about the accessibility thing, because that is still an issue, right? There's a lot of people that are operating in the township economy that don't have access to bank accounts. So how are they going to use online shopping? Because they don't have a card, for example. And I think a lot of people don't realize this, and it's important because when it comes to digital and going digital, something that we see often is that what we call the digital divide, right? And that's basically separating the haves from the have-nots. So for someone like me or someone like you who's got access to a bank account, it's simple, For us, it's easy. We go on, put in our details, we've purchased other stuff before. There's not much stress involved with that. But for a lot of people, they don't have access to a bank account, right? And what's really cool to see, though, is although that digital divide does exist, there are fintechs that are coming up in the space that are providing solutions to that. So, for example, there's a fintech that I know of that is creating vouchers where someone can go to, let's say, their local retailer. They can bring some cash, give them the cash, and what they'll do is they'll give them a voucher, and that voucher will enable them to purchase stuff online instead of using their credit card or debit card to make the purchase. So there is an upside to it, and there are people that are stepping into the gap, which is great to see, and that's what I want to be speaking about and sharing.
I'm glad that there are fintech companies that are coming up now that are catering for that missing middle, which wasn't catered for before. In terms of retailers, what strategies are they using now to attract and retain customers during the Black Friday sales? So is it more of, a once-off, we want you on that day, or is there a retention strategy that they use?
There is 100% a retention strategy, and that is becoming more and more important because when it comes, and we see this in the digital space a lot, right? A lot of people are starting businesses, and you'll see that a lot of the successful businesses that operate in the financial space are actually represented by a person. And the reason why that's the case is because it's much better or much easier to buy from another person than it is to buy from a brand. And that's what a lot of the big brands are struggling with right now, is being able to be relatable, right? So that's why we see a whole bunch of influencer marketing coming into the scene, because brands are basically hiring influencers to be the face of their company because, like I said, it's easier to buy from a person than it is to buy from a brand or trust a person. Exactly. And when we talk about relationships, what are we talking about? We're talking about trust. And that's the key word. So when it comes to building trust, it's a lot easier for a person to build trust with another person, right? So when it comes to the experience that one has when they're shopping, that element of relationship building is so important, because if you have a positive affiliation to a brand, then that means you're more likely to purchase from them going forward because you trust them and you have a good relationship. So that relationship element, I'm glad you asked about that because it's important. And the relationship is not just a once-off situation, right? Relationships are built over time, over multiple engagements. So the first engagement one might be with an ad that shows up on their online feed, right? The second engagement might be going onto the website. The third engagement might be going and purchasing an item. What happens after that? If a client of ours is going to sell a product online and after they've taken the money they disappear, that means that the relationship is not likely going to be a fruitful one in the future. So that's why it's important that once the person buys the product, that relationship continues to grow and flourish. And if clients of ours are able to do that, that's how you retain clients for longer and how you have a more successful business.
So then how do you as a digital marketing agency track that?
So one way that you would track that is through what we call user experience, right? So that's referring more to the website side of things. When someone comes to your website, there are different tools that can be used to analyze how they navigate that website. So for example, what's the first page that they land on? What button is the first button that they click after they land on that page? How long do they spend on that page? All of these different analytics can be used to paint a story or a picture of the kind of interaction that that person is having with that website. But what I do need to emphasize is that that's just one element of it, right? The whole journey is actually beyond just the website. It goes into social media, it goes into email marketing, and what we refer to that as is an ecosystem. So what we do for our clients is we build digital ecosystems that think about the client's engagement with the platform from the start all the way till not the end, but the next time we see you.
So each and every single person that accesses each and every single website is tracked. So their user experience is tracked from beginning to end.
That's correct. So when you go onto a website and you see cookies are the way that we track you. Cookies are basically just packets of data that track how you are using the website.
So, I mean, if you have been accepting those cookies just so you can get that notification out the way, because obviously if you reject, then you have to go through a sort of a little selection. If you're in a rush to shop or whatever it is that you're doing, just know that accepting cookies means that your experience is tracked. But obviously the data is used in a good way and not a way that would expose you or affect you negatively.
Well, you see why trust is so important, right? Because it could be used in bad ways. When I talk about technology is a tool. So think of a hammer, right? You can use a hammer to hit someone over the head and really hurt them, right? Or you could use a hammer to create a beautiful piece of furniture that can last generations throughout your family. It's a tool. So it really depends on how it's being used. And that's why trust is important and why people knowing about data and how it's used is also important. And this is something that I think we should definitely talk about in another time, because that's a story for another day.
So we've spoken about, the pros of online shopping, which is convenience and accessibility. But what are some of the challenges, not for consumers, but that online retailers face during Black Friday specifically, and how do they overcome them? You have mentioned websites crashing. What are some of the other challenges?
So another example might be stock, right? So if you have a really popular product, it's very easy for that product to be sold out very quickly. And if someone's coming to your website for that product, you can imagine the kind of disappointment that they're going to experience if they come there and it's sold out. So one of the ways that you can maneuver that is, and this is why data is such a powerful tool, right? If you have been operating in the online store space for, let's say, 2 years, you'll have a track record of how many products you sold and what those products were. You'd also have a track record in terms of when were they sold the most, when were they not sold. So you can use all of that data to start making predictions about what you think is going to be the most popular product this Black Friday. And you can use those predictions to stock more of that product, and therefore the result of that would be that your clients and customers are more happy because they were able to get what they were looking for, and you don't have to deal with the negative side of not having stock of that product. That would be one example. I would say another example is also communication, right? Getting your message out there. So a lot of clients, they don't utilize social media strategies to communicate their messages, or they don't utilize them effectively. So digital marketing, when it comes to whether it be social media marketing or influencer marketing or paid adverts, it's really important that businesses are able to be working with partners that are clued up in those spaces to be able to make sure that they are getting the proper return on their investment when they invest in those different marketing strategies.
Josh, tell me, why is it that when I Google the price of a fridge or a TV, I then all of a sudden start getting ads? It feels like I'm bombarded even on social media popping up about that specific product. Or if I am Googling a specific car, is it because I have accepted cookies? And does data get shared between organizations? Because if I am looking for something at a specific store and I have typed in fridge at such and such a place, why am I getting adverts and recommendations from other stores for the exact same product? Am I being watched?
Okay, you're not being watched, right? But it's all data driven. So yes, to answer your question about do people exchange data, yes, you have businesses that are solely built on exchanging and selling data. So what these businesses do is they collect data on you and then they sell it off to different companies that utilize that data to target you, right? So we don't realize like everything that we do in the digital space most of the time is being tracked. And it's important to know that because yes, these people might be using data to target ads towards you, but there's other uses that you could use that data for that can actually benefit you personally. And that's something that we're looking into as an organization is how do we develop tools that allow people to utilize their data for their own benefits instead of these companies using it for their benefit. Because like I mentioned, data is a very powerful tool, but it just depends how you use it. Another thing is it's not necessarily just cookies. So when you go onto a website, yes, if you accept cookies there, then obviously they're going to be tracking certain data on you. But a lot of that data is actually generated from where we spend most of our time online. And if I were to ask you where you spend most of your time online, what would the answer be?
Sure. A large amount of it would be social media. And just then after that, it would be Googling and researching different topics.
Right, exactly.
And online shopping.
There we go. So social media platforms in themselves are also collecting data on you as well. So the type of data that you engage with, the different topics. I mean, on TikTok, for example, right? TikTok learns you very quickly. So there's certain things that you'll pick up on. If you go onto TikTok, immediately it starts playing for you. You don't need to sign up or anything. The moment it starts playing on you, depending on how long you watch that video, if you like it or if you comment on it, it's building a profile in terms of who you are. If you spend 20 seconds watching a video about cooking and you spend 1 second watching a video about sports, automatically it's telling that platform this person's a little bit more interested in cooking than they are in sports, right? And as you use this app, I mean, if we look at our engagements on these apps, right? I mean, my engagement sometimes tells me that I've been on my phone maybe 5 hours a day, right? If you're spending 5 hours a day on social media over the span of a year, how many hours is that? It's a lot of time, right? So all that data that you're feeding into the app is really giving them a really good profile in terms of who you are, and that can be utilized for different purposes, and one of which being ads. And that's how you start finding ads come up on your story, even if you think about them. A lot of the time, you don't even need to have a conversation. You might be thinking about it.
You think about it and then it pops up, yeah.
And if you think about it, right, you don't have to verbally communicate what you're interested in or what you are trying to find in order for you to actually be interested in finding it, right? So for example, like if you are thinking about buying a new oven, right? When you go onto TikTok and you're seeing oven reviews, you're going to be spending more time watching those reviews. You're probably going to be commenting or sharing them or liking them. And that means you don't need to verbally communicate to your friend, oh no, I'm looking for an oven. It can already tell just from your actions how you've been using the app that you're looking for an oven, and therefore you're going to find oven ads on your profile. So it seems like this whole like mystical like black magic thing, but it's actually very logical when you think about it. It really just comes down to data and our actions and how we're using these different platforms.
Can you provide any insights or predictions in the future of online shopping, in general, and then secondly during Black Friday?
Okay, so the future for me, what I would love to see is more accessibility. I want to see more South Africans and Africans being able to participate in the digital economy, and not just from a consumer perspective, right? What this digital space has enabled us to do is for little guys to actually compete against the big guys. So if you think about Takealot, right? Takealot was a small business that's now competing against Amazon, which is a behemoth in the digital space. So not even just that, you can even find, there's a lot of skincare brands. We had a client that was a skincare brand that we worked with, and that skincare brand was founded by a single person who was really passionate about skincare and started developing her own products and selling it online. That creates an opportunity for people to build their own businesses. And the more adoption, the more education that we have about this space, the more opportunities there are, and the more people that succeed, the more our economy grows and gets uplifted. And that's ultimately our objective within JD Creations. Our objectives is to connect Africa to the digital economy and the world to Africa. And by doing that, we are going to elevate Africa in the global space. And I'm here for that.
So with e-commerce, it seems very straightforward. I mean, you go onto whatever website or platform where you want to purchase, you choose an item, you put it into your cart, you upload, you put in your banking details, and it ships within a few days. Is there any innovation in the space or anything that we can look forward to?
100%. So we touched on it a bit earlier in terms of that personalization element. So like we mentioned, it's about building relationships. So if I'm going to have 100,000 people come to my website, it's going to be very difficult for me. Well, in the past, it would be very difficult for me to have a personal relationship with each of them because of the scale that they're operating at. But with the new advent of AI, it's become a lot easier for us to personalize the things that we are working on. So with AI, it's allowing us to personalize people's experiences when they visit different stores, and that allows us to create stronger relationships with customers and clients. The second thing that I will predict seeing more of is chatbots. So having a personal assistant that comes to assist you while you go through that site. So instead of spending time Googling and going through a website and looking for different items, you will now be able to chat to a chatbot who is fed data on the business and therefore knows a lot about the business and is able to answer many questions that you might have when looking for a product. So instead of going onto Google and then simultaneously opening a second tab of microwaves, looking at different microwaves and then Googling which microwave is best for you, you'll be able to ask a chatbot, hey, I'm looking for a microwave. I have a family of 3 people and I mostly want to make popcorn in my microwave. What is the best microwave for that? And that chatbot will be able to go through all of the descriptions of the microwaves that they have on their website and be able to determine which microwave is optimized for that usage and tell you this is the best microwave for you to be able to use. And that's the kind of level of personalization that we're going to be seeing going forward that's based on the power of AI.
I am blown away by what you've just said, because sometimes when you do buy a product, you don't fully know the specs or what it is that you're looking for. You just want the best of that particular product. And sometimes even if they do explain to you in store, if you're not, for example, a tech person, you don't necessarily understand all the jargon, and you may not know if that product is the best for you. So yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Josh, can you tell us a bit about JD Creations and what you do?
100%. So like I said earlier, our goal and objective is to connect Africa to the digital economy and the world to Africa. And the way that we do that is through building digital ecosystems, like I mentioned, for our clients. So that can range from developing a website, producing social media content, or even social media management and strategy. And we are basically working with companies in order to take their business that might function in the real world and transfer it into the digital realm, or even someone who might want to start a business in the digital space and is not too sure where to go. We are the people that are going to help you make sure that that transition is as seamless as possible.
How can people get hold of you?
Yeah, so you can find us on LinkedIn. You can visit our website, www.jdcreations.co.za, or you could go onto our Instagram as well. You can find us on all socials, and we've also got a podcast that we run as well called the C.Cast. So if you go onto YouTube and you search C-Cast, you'll be able to see our conversations with different industry leaders that are utilizing their skills and knowledge in the digital space to grow their businesses and uplift Africa.
So if you want to start any sort of digital platform, then Josh and JD Creations are the correct people to contact. They are connecting Africa to the digital economy. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing those insights with us. I certainly learned a lot in the in the 20 to 30 minutes that we had a chat. One of the main things is just that there can be innovation in any industry, and you spoke specifically about e-commerce, where I thought it couldn't even possibly go any further than that, but exciting things happening there. Thank you so much for joining us. I will definitely be listening to the C.Cast podcast very soon, and I look forward to learning a lot from there as well. And that is how we ended today with Josh Dillon joining us from JD Creations.
On your radio at 88.1 FM. Hear it, feel it, live it.